Welcome to Therapy Unplugged, the podcast where two therapists offer insights to the real-life issues we all experience. We are your hosts, Sarah Benoit and Meaghan McCullough.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back. It is Meaghan here. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am well, and I am feeling good about today's topic.
Mm-hmm.
So, listeners, we are going to be having a conversation about letting go of what no longer serves us, or perhaps it never did serve us at all. But it's really about letting go and releasing, what we are ready to release, and I thought this was good timing, given the fact that it's really hard to believe, but 2025 is winding down and coming to an end. And so for today, the kind of loose structure of our episode will be that, we're going to discuss about why it's important to let things go. We're going to talk about how to recognize when perhaps you're holding on to something that you actually are ready to let go of. And then, of course, we'll give you strategies on how to let it go. Yeah. So I feel good about this. How about you?
Yes, and as I was saying, before we started, I mean, you mentioned the timing. I've had 2 or 3 conversations with clients in the last week about this very subject, and there's this theme even I've seen on my Substack page where that's coming up where it's it's very interesting because people are talking about it in different ways, but it's
Mhm.
that idea of, like you said, not just letting go, but what I like about the idea is that it creates and I don't think we necessarily think about it this way, but it creates space. And,
Mhm.
whether that means we're letting something else in or it's just giving us room to breathe.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really now we're getting into why I think we both do feel it's important
Mhm,
to kind of assess where you're at in your life. And you're right. Letting go is going to mean different things to different people, right? It could be that you're wanting to let go of, say, your negative self-talk, right?
mhm.
That's one that we've talked a lot about, I think, right,
Yes.
in different ways. It could be something tangible or concrete that you're ready to, you clean it literally, like, you're ready to clean the basement and let go of things that you've been
Mhm,
holding on to for 20 years that really might serve someone else better.
mhm.
That's right, it's just taking up space, it's taking up clutter. So I think that it's important as you listen to this episode to keep an open mind to what it means for you, right? Like, it could be a thought, it could be something tangible, it could be a habit that you're ready to release. So it really runs the gamut, I think, here.
Right, and as you were talking, it made me just think of an example that I think probably everyone can relate to is and I mean, we're thinking about this on a much broader scope and potentially deeper level, but think about how many people clean out their closets,
Mhm.
right? Where it's, "Okay, I've outgrown this," or, "This doesn't fit anymore, I don't like this anymore," and I don't think we ever think about it in regards to it serving us. We think about, "Oh my gosh, I haven't worn that in 5
Mhm.
holding on to it," or, but at the same time, and I know I've done this, like, I still have things that I have held on to because like dresses, because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I remember wearing that, it was so much fun. This was a beautiful dress, I felt good in it." But the reality is, okay, I haven't worn the damn thing in 20 years. Why
Mhm.
onto that? But I'm holding on to it because of nostalgia and the feeling that it gives me when I
Yeah.
see it. And I
Right.
and I think that's one of the things that's important for people to, as we're talking today, to remember, like, kind of what's at the root of things for them. Like, why do we hold on to, whether it's a thought, an object, a relationship? And, it could be for healthy reasons, but it could also be for very unhealthy reasons too.
Mhm. Absolute Absolutely. And, one other thing I would like to add to this kind of part about why could letting go be important is, I've been thinking a lot about this idea lately. And I feel like this is timely to be talking about this right now because as we approach the new year, there's so much talk, and I certainly would include myself in this, in getting on the jumping on the bandwagon of New Year's resolutions, right?
Mm.
And I am definitely not knocking New Year's resolutions. I think they absolutely can have a benefit and a place in people's lives. And it tends to be that when the holidays are over and we enter January is just a time when there's this renewed energy perhaps to really look at your life and make some changes. And so all that is wonderful. However, I'm looking at it just slightly in a slightly different way this year. So in terms of New Year's resolutions, rather than thinking about it in terms of something I want to add to my life,
Mhm.
I'm really thinking about it in terms of what do I need to let go of? Right? What do I need to unravel? Um
Mm.
And it's just a slightly different way, I think, of looking at it.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm really happy we're talking about this today.
Yeah.
So in terms of recognizing, right, when we're holding on to something that perhaps really we would be better suited to release and let go. Do you have any ideas or any thoughts you want to share there?
Yeah, actually, and it's interesting. I know I kind of outlined a few different ones, but I actually shared with someone this morning, um, one way to recognize, or to it's I think it's more about tuning in. Um, One of the things I had offered up was tune into your body. What is your body saying to you? Are
Mhm.
you, if you're in a certain situation, or you're even, I mean, if it's an object or whatnot, if you're looking at something or holding something, you know, is your body, is it content? Is it at rest and at peace, or is it anxious? Are you getting fidgety? Um, I think sometimes it's not easy to identify,
Mhm.
oh, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't be holding on to this, or am I like, why am I even holding on to something? Whereas I think our body can certainly tell us. Um, and I think there are more, maybe, I don't know if overt is the word that's coming to my head, but like thinking about, um, whether it's, are you avoiding? Are there certain people you're avoiding? Are there situations you're avoiding? Are you, do you have a room that is just so cluttered you never go in it and you're just avoiding it? It could really be repurposed for something else.
Yeah, I really like those. And I think, for example, the avoidance that you bring up, Sarah, it's avoidance can be a really uh useful gauge, I think, right? To determine whether or not we are engaged in a behavior or a thought, or perhaps it's a relationship or a job
Mhm.
that is expansive, or is it constricting? And so yeah, I really like that one. And I also agree that if you're having a hard time intellectually figuring out, is this something I let go of or is it something I keep?
Mhm.
I agree. I think tuning into your body can also be a really good tool to use to figure that out.
Yeah. I think another way of thinking about it too is, are there are there things, and the first thing that comes to my mind is like habits that you no longer want to engage in. So for example,
Mhm.
If you find that you're eating dinner late at night and it's tough to fall asleep, you feel, it just feels heavy. Okay, so that's a pattern that I'm holding on to for whatever reason. And then how do I go about changing that? And it could be, again, this is that avoidance piece, right? Like, do you avoid getting to work on time because you hate your job? Okay, and maybe you don't want to be in that job anymore. So that means you don't want to exist in that position, that company, that role. Okay, so that's something I'm holding on to. What do I want to do about it? Um, I think, and I am going to caution my listeners and myself when I say this. I think, and I talk about this a lot with clients, where is the cost of holding on to X, whether that's a relationship, a habit, a thing, whatever, a thought, does that outweigh the benefits? And the caution here, I think, is to understand that there are going to be times where things definitely cost us more than
Mhm.
we reap the benefit. But this is the broader picture. Over time, over the long, I mean, I hear this a lot from people where it's, "Well, I feel like this is a one-sided friendship or a one-sided relationship," and they're always asking me for something, or they want this or they want that. And that's gonna happen. We're gonna go through phases where we need people and we're asking more. But as long as it nets out at the end and there is that reciprocation. So I just wanna caution people, like, don't look at, like, "Well, in the last 2 days, this person, they've just taken, 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 so I'm cutting them out." Like, that is kind of ridiculous.
I completely agree, and I'm really glad you're bringing this up. Right? Relationships and even things like your job, right? There are going to be days where it's just going to feel really hard.
Mhm.
And we're not right. We're absolutely not talking about shutting someone out because you get in a fight, right? Um, I think that it really, right. Over time, is the way we wanna like, big picture is kind of what we're talking about here. So, if you have a friendship with someone that has literally drained your energy for 5 years, where you're really not feeling like, he or she really doesn't ask me how I'm doing, right? Like, they just call and they suck every ounce of energy out of me.
Mhm.
Might be one where you wanna just question, right? Like, is this constricting or is this expansive? Um, so you're absolutely right. We're talking kind of about big picture spectrum here in terms of, releasing things that no longer bring you joy or just or consistently, let's say, drain you.
Right, right. And I think another one, and I think, this is interesting because thinking back to all of our episodes to date, I mean, a lot of what we have talked about are ways to help people transform and to grow. And when we grow, sometimes our priorities change, our values might change, um, our priorities in terms of, what are our goals, our relationships. And I think sometimes it's important to look at, are again, whether it's my beliefs, my habits, the people I surround myself with, the organizations I belong to, my gym routine, whatever it is, are they in alignment still with who I am and who I'm trying to be or evolve into? And I think that can be a really tough one because unless you've really nailed down, like, if you're in kind of that transitionary period where you're like, "Well, I'm trying this hat on to see if I like, you know, if I feel confident in this role or whatnot." So I think
Mhm.
that can be a real tricky one, but I do think ultimately, it's and you'll know in the end, like, "Oh, this doesn't really align with me anymore, so why am I holding on to it?"
Yeah, absolutely, and it's what you're talking about right now is reminding me of an old episode we did on authenticity, right? And
Mhm.
stepping into your authentic self. And so, yeah, absolutely. That is another way of just really paying attention to, am I holding on to something that is I want to hold on to because it's truly in alignment with my authentic self, or have I perhaps outgrown this?
Right, right.
Yeah. Are there
How
any
about you?
other ways you want to, talk about just that piece and how to recognize?
I don't think so. Is there anything you think that I've missed?
No,
Okay.
no. So maybe we can, transition then, and we've already kind of sometimes these things overlap, but,
Mhm.
we can start to talk more about, strategies, different strategies you might, uh take. And I think that one that we've already kind of talked about here, but it will probably lead into some other strategies, is it sounds like we both agree that that self-inquiry piece is really important, right?
Right,
That self-awareness. Because if I don't know how I'm feeling, right? Then how am I possibly going going to be able to figure out, right? Like, is this something that's serving me or not? So,
right, right.
so self inquiry is key.
Mhm. And I think that's gonna look different for different people, and as you were saying this, what I was thinking of is, for example, I have to write things down. I For some reason, I mean, and I actually know this is a proven fact, like, for us to write things, it then takes, you know, it takes space in our head, like, we remember it and it kinda it grows. Um, but I think what's helpful is, like, when we say take an inventory, it's, you know, open your mind, like, what does that mean? Is that about your habits? Again, is it about your thoughts? Is it about your beliefs? Is it about, um your health? Is it a physical list of things? Are you
Hmm.
physically cleaning out your basement? Um, and, then you could even get to another level, like, spirituality and, um, kind of that idea of joy, like intrinsic joy. What fosters that for you? So I do think it's important if you are going to actively think about, okay, what can I let go? Think about what do you need to do for yourself to make it work? Are you the kind of person that needs to write it down? Do you need to have a vision board? Do you need to, be held accountable? Do you need to share with your partner, here's what I'm doing? Or your best friend or something like that?
Yeah, that's great advice. Do what you need to do to kind of get it out of your head and into just like maybe the first step of a plan, right?
Yes. Yeah.
As we're talking here, I did have I thought I might share just one of my own personal examples of something that I am hoping to really work on letting go in the new year. I mean, I already am, but I think I even want to put more focus on it in 2026. And if it's okay with you, maybe we can kind of I was just thinking maybe I could even go through the self-inquiry that led me to this idea of letting this go,
I think that would be great.
because it might be one that a lot of people can relate to. So, one of the, let's say, thoughts that I have pretty frequently throughout the week, especially the work week, is this thought that I am rushing, right?
Mm,
Like I am always I in my mind anyway, it's like this idea of how can I beat the clock? Right? Like time is just ticking away and I'm feeling rushed. And the reason why I'm really wanting to kind of shine a light on this thought that, "Oh, I'm always rushed,"
mhm.
is that it causes, right? So let's go back to the language I use. Now, does that thought make me feel expansive or does it make me feel constricted? For me,
Mm.
it absolutely makes me feel constricted.
Mhm.
And it can bring on this kind of level of stress that I don't feel is serving me at all.
Mhm.
And so my goal is, so if I've recognized that, so I'm recognizing that telling myself I'm always rushed is not really in alignment with my authentic self. It's not
Mm.
really who I am.
Mhm.
Um so okay, so if that's the case, then what do I wanna start to do differently? What do I wanna do about it? And for me, I am really wanting to focus more on being in the present moment. And I know that that phrase kinda gets thrown around a lot, right? Like, there's so much out there on mindfulness, and there's so much out there on just being in the moment, but what does it really mean?
Mhm.
And the conclusion that I came to, and now kinda tying this into our episode and tying it into letting go, is what I realized is that for me to really appreciate the present moment, I temporarily need to let go of my thoughts of the past, and I need
Mhm.
to temporarily let go of my thoughts of the future.
Mhm.
Right? And really just get in the moment. I think like what we're doing right now, actually, I think the podcast is a good example of just staying present with what we're doing in this very second.
Mhm.
Um, but now, am I great at doing that throughout the day? Probably not.
Mhm.
And so that's just an example of, and maybe some listeners will resonate with what I'm saying and maybe some won't, and that's fine. But that's kind of an example of the letting go that I'm working on right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's a good example, and I think one of the things that as you were talking that came into my mind, and this is basically a strategy too, is it's accepting the situation, right? And knowing
Mhm.
that it's normal and it's healthy to outgrow things. And like you mentioned, like that idea of being present and maybe not getting stuck in the past and or not looking too far into the future. And nostalgia, I think, when thinking of the past is one of the big
Mhm.
things that keeps people stuck. And I know that I think I had shared with you offline that that is a big one for me because I am so sentimental and I will hold on to things that intellectually I go, I don't need that. Like, I mean, I know I don't need that. Like, I don't look at it, I don't do it.
Mhm.
But when I do look at it, then there's that nostalgic feeling, and I am in the past, and I'm reminiscing, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this was wonderful." And so I'm really not being present. Um, and, I think it's overall, though, and this is a tough one for people because to your point, this goes back to the self inquiry. It's really about being honest with ourselves and saying, okay, this is the current situation. Like you have gotten to a place where, something, and I think you really named it well, which is this isn't in alignment with me feeling rushed. And this isn't necessarily who I am, but you're accepting the fact that, but this is where I'm finding myself. And so, okay, it is what it is, but what am I going to do to really focus on that and be more grounded and present.
Yes, absolutely. And, I maybe this is a good time to add to what you're saying too, that I think in a lot of cases, the taking very small steps is good advice, and we've
Yes.
talked about small steps before in our habits episode, and there really is power in just taking baby steps. Um, so, don't feel listeners like, you have to quit that unhealthy habit overnight. That's not what we're saying here.
And to use your example, I mean, you talk
Mhm.
about, the baby steps or small steps. I think it's about being practical and realistic, right? Because what you're talking about, I think is very hard for people to be present.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
think I mean, it requires quiet, and that could mean quiet of the mind and quiet of the space. But, you aren't not I mean, not you specifically, but, like, chances are you're not gonna, like, at the end of tomorrow go, "Wow, I had 6 hours of, like, really present time."
Right. Right. Exactly.
So, it might be more realistic to be like, "Hey, if I can do this for 5 minutes,
Yep. Yep.
that is gonna work for me." And I think and to kind of piggyback on that, it's in terms of those practical steps, I do think it's about weaving in, what is my intention? If my intention is to just start small and to practice, then that's what your intention is, and then weave that
Mhm.
into each day, because the other part of this, and this actually wasn't on my list, but I'm just thinking about it, is it's integration. How am I
Mhm.
going to if I'm gonna create space for if I'm letting go of something, okay, what is my intention? My intention probably isn't to just refill that space up.
Mhm. Right, exactly. That kinda gets back to the angle I was looking at this from, right? That it doesn't have to be about adding something in. It could be about just creating more space for yourself. You're perhaps not so chronically stressed during the day. It it
Exactly.
it could be as simple as that.
Right. Right.
And as long as we're talking about examples, because I do realize my desire for being in the moment is kind of a lot. It may not be the most practical example that people are wanting to relate to. And one, so I just want to share one that comes up so frequently in session. And this is a much more tangible one, again, just to give people an example of how to go about this. But um, I have clients bring up a lot in session about how they are, they don't always use the word addicted, but some do, addicted
Mhm.
to social media
Ah.
and addicted to their screens. And, I just, I hear this a lot. And it is one of the things that for a lot of clients we end up working on, like, it kinda becomes part of their treatment plan. Like, how do I and I wanna make it clear, I don't mean we're talking about letting go of social media completely, although some do, but that's not really what I'm talking about here, but it's more about letting go of the idea that social media is going to dictate your mood or that, right? Like social media is the bar we need to use in terms of knowing if we're living a good life or not, right? Like those
Mhm.
kind of things. And in that, it could include, yeah, and I'm also going to reduce my social media to, right, like, I'm just making this up, it doesn't have to be this at all, but maybe 2 hours a day versus, oh my gosh, like, I was literally online scrolling for, 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever. So, I think it's just, you know, it's a concrete example of something that comes up a lot for people.
And I think that makes me think of something which I think is important as well, which that idea of letting go of something that doesn't serve you does not have to be black and white.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be, "All right, I spend way too much time on social media. I am not I'm deleting all of it.
All
I'm."
or nothing.
Yes, yes. Because I think sometimes that's what happens is people think, and really part of this is holding on to the things that do serve you. And, if you were to look at a pie and you might say, well, 3/4 of that pie I want to let go of, but I'm going to keep this 1/4. That's great. And this is part of knowing, like accepting the situation and doing that inventory piece. Um, and, and I think that's a good way, like the social media is a good way of thinking about, it's interesting. I actually don't. talk with clients very much about this, but I think it's mind numbing.
Mhm.
So, are you able to this is where I think kind of checking in with your body might be helpful around this idea example of social media. Um, if you're just checking out for 4 hours a day, like where did you go? And and
Yeah.
and what why? Why are you doing that? Um, and that goes down a whole other rabbit hole, but I think, it's important, like, some of the things that we do engage in that we may wanna let go of they may be covering up something else. And, okay, so then part of that this is where I think we're talking about change, right? Because there's
Mhm.
acknowledging that, okay, maybe there are things that I want that don't serve me anymore, but that could feel really scary because, wait a minute, you're asking me to be present 2 more hours out of my day? Oh, crap.
Mm.
And so I think it's acknowledging that change is hard. Um, that self-reflective piece can be really hard, but even by having the thought of, "There might be some things I wanna let go now," I think that's a really brave stance.
Yes, absolutely, and, um, practicing that self-compassion piece too while we're doing that, I think is basically what you're talking about here too. So it
Yes.
doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be, "I'm never going on Facebook again." Maybe it's, "You know what? Maybe for the last hour or half hour before I go to bed, I am turning off my phone and I'm going to read, or I'm gonna listen to music or meditate or just do some, who knows, hang out with my cat," right? Like, um, it 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 can be just a seemingly small step that actually can reap a lot of rewards, but in the process, be kind to yourself
Yes.
because you're not gonna be perfect at this. You might not even be good at it at
Mhm.
first. If this is a really ingrained habit, for example, that you're trying to let go of.
Right, and it's gonna be uncomfortable, right? I mean, we've talked about this in
Mhm.
the past too, where there could be fear that is kind of at the root of this, holding you back from making whatever change it is that you're thinking about. And, it's interesting, and I'm surprised I didn't think of this sooner, but, just thinking of different examples for why people maybe have a hard time letting things go, and I this kinda goes back to the episode that never was around guilt. Um, I wish that we tried, but
We tried.
tried. But I think that's one of the things that holds people back from change and from letting go of things because they feel guilty. They feel like,
Mm.
done it this way for 20 years or, I've think of it like in a job. I mean, and I don't think you see this as much as you used to, but there's that loyalty, whether it's
Mm.
to like, "Well, but I've worked here for 30 years and I can't change now, like, I owe them." You don't owe them anything. Um, you think of, again, patterns and, well, if I start saying no to this person and, if I start putting myself first instead of putting everyone else first, they're not gonna like that, so I can't I feel guilty about doing that, I don't want them to be uncomfortable. Um, and I think that plays a role in why people struggle to let things go because whether it's out of guilt or obligation, or maybe they've received messages like, "Well, this is how you're supposed to do it."
Mhm. Yeah, I really, you know what? There's a word you just used, Sarah, that's really standing out to me, and it's loyalty.
Mm,
Um, and when is loyalty connected more to guilt, and when is loyalty more connected to that true, authentic, joyful expression of yourself? Um, and yeah, I really, that word just for some reason just kind of like stood out to me when you were talking about this. And I think that guilt, loyalty, and its connection to guilt might be another really good theme for people shine the light on and just, again, do that self-inquiry around.
One of the things that just popped into my head, given that it's the holidays, is I remember during COVID that when it forced people to not gather for the holidays, and I had
Mhm,
what I didn't see at the time, I've seen it within the last few years, is that, say, for example, I had someone who really did not enjoy Thanksgiving with their extended family. It was very
mhm.
hard for them. It was very, there would be a lot of bickering, and it just was very uncomfortable. And it was interesting because they said, it was great during COVID because I didn't have to go spend that time with my family. And it was really interesting because my question was, well, what would you want to do differently? Or what is holding you back from doing something different? And they're like, "Well, we've always done this. We've always gotten together and we've always," I'm like, "Does anyone have fun? Does anyone enjoy their time together?" Like, "Well, no." I'm like, "Then why are you all doing it?" Like, maybe it's more like if it's about connection, maybe you don't do it during a holiday per se, if that's what kind of riles things up. But so long story short, it took a few years, like I want to say maybe 2 years where they're like, we're gonna travel now on Thanksgiving. We're
Mm,
gonna do an immediate family
mhm.
trip." Um, and that was the catalyst for letting go of that old tradition that really didn't work anymore.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Are there any other steps or strategies that you want to mention or that you think that we've missed?
I think there's probably 2 that stand out to me, which is, sometimes we have to in order to let go of what doesn't serve us, we have to forgive others. And again, there's this, we've talked about this before too, like forgiveness is not about giving um a person, a situation a free pass. That's for you. It's about freeing up the heaviness, the anger, the burden that you carry when there's resentment and anger and animosity or whatever it is. So there might be this element of forgiveness that needs to happen, whether that's forgiving someone else or even forgiving yourself
Mhm.
to say, "Hey, yeah, I've made mistakes in the past and it's okay." Um, and I think maybe one of the more important aspects is when we let go of things, um, there's a sense of loss that goes with
Yeah.
that. So I think it's important to honor that loss and that grieving process. And don't, this is the whole thing with grief. I mean, there's no timetable. So if you're thinking like, well, I should be over this in 10 minutes. If you are, that's awesome. But
Mhm.
chances are that's not going to be reality. And I think it's important to honor the process because this is also part of evolving. Like you might look at whatever it is you're giving up and saying like, "You know what? That had its place and that served its purpose. And maybe I was a different person then than I am now, and that's okay." And maybe there's parts of that are hard to say goodbye to, but again, it's okay. So I think allowing yourself the grieving process and not being surprised by emotions that come up because you could go through the typical grieving process of anger, or you might start to barter and be like, well, if I still did it this way,
Right.
there's all of that. So I think and like you said earlier, that lends itself to that self compassion piece of
Mhm.
honoring, like, okay, maybe this is how I feel and it's okay. And just being kind to yourself.
Yep. I love both of these last couple of strategies you're bringing up, and just to kind of piggyback on both of them real quick, the forgiveness piece, yeah, is so important, and I realize this is just a topic in and of itself, but I do suspect that in some cases the difficulty in letting go could very well have to do with, a lack of forgiveness, right?
Yes.
Again, and whether it's with lack of forgiveness to a certain person or a situation or lack of forgiveness within yourself. I
Mhm.
think my hunch, right, is that that probably can very well cause that like, holding on to it. No, I'm really angry at that person, like, what that person did 30 years ago, right, is, it's unforgivable. And so but by making that your assertion, you're holding on to it,
Right.
and it kind of speaks to what we've both said before about forgiveness. It's not about the other person, and it doesn't mean you approve or even have to accept what they did.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean you think that they suddenly, okay, I guess they were right. No, it doesn't have to be that at all. But it really does have to do with freeing yourself, right? So if I'm ready to let go of this thing, if forgiveness needs to happen, I'm going to practice forgiveness, and it's going to be the benefit is going to be for me. It's not
Correct.
necessarily the others, this whether it's a situation or a person or whatnot. So yeah, I really like that, Sarah. And I also, completely agree that there may be some grieving that needs to happen, right? And that's okay. It's okay to honor habits that no longer serve us. It's okay
Mhm.
to, yeah, this thing really played a huge role in my life, and it's gonna be really hard to let it go. It's okay to feel that way.
Right.
Um the other end of the spectrum might be maybe there won't be grief and maybe there really will be like this celebratory
Right?
feeling that comes from, "Oh my gosh, I've finally done it," right? I've
Mhm.
finally released things. So, both feelings are completely okay and they're completely valid.
Yes, and I'm thank you for bringing up the celebration piece because I think
Mm.
that's really important. I think we don't do enough of that with ourselves. We don't celebrate the little wins or the progress. We kind of wait until I think of grad school and like going through grad school, like even my parents said to me, they're like, you were happier like when you graduated grad school than undergrad. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so happy it was done. Like it's just
Yep.
because it was so work. And I know I never not never, but I mean, I did not celebrate the little wins along the way, and I think that's really important when you're letting go of something because, again, like, it's a process, and especially if you're talking about things like taking practical small steps, it's really important to congratulate yourself, celebrate those wins, and sure, at the end, you're gonna feel proud and you're gonna be happy, but I think it's important because it keeps us in that more positive mindset, which allows us to keep moving forward as well.
Yeah. And, your example is a good one because I think it shows also you can hold both things at once, right? So if we're using the graduating college example, which by the way, this was true for me too for undergrad. In undergrad, when I graduated, I had such a mix. So on one hand, there was definite grief and loss from, I had made some really good friends. I loved where I had gone to college. It was just a really kind of like fun, special time of my life.
Mhm.
And I knew it was coming to an end, and there was real grief with that. And at the same time, I felt really proud, right, that I had gotten my degree, that I really had buckled down and I got good grades and so there was a lot I was excited about too. But it was both for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. So is there anything else you wanna add before we wrap up here, or do you think that we've covered what we wanted to cover?
I think we've done a good job of covering this.
Good. Yeah, me too. Me too. So, listeners, our last episode this will be our last episode of the year, and we have decided to wrap up the year, talking about gratitude. So we're feeling really good about that. And we also wanted to let our listeners know that not only is it our last episode of the year, but Sarah and I have decided to take a hiatus. So we will not be returning in January. I think in our last episode, we will both be talking a little bit about some ideas we have for how we're going to be using our time. But we just wanted to give people a heads up right now that that's kind of where we're at. So, thank you so much for listening and stay tuned in a couple of weeks for our episode on gratitude.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
If you want to share your thoughts or ideas with us, you can email us at therapyunpluggedpodcast@proton.me. Until next time, be sure to subscribe to Therapy Unplugged on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.